In my previous life, as I like to call it, when I spent 9 years as a reporter, the best part about that job, every morning when I woke up, I never knew how the day would unfold, what I would be covering, what I would be writing about. That was the beautiful thing. Same thing in this phase of my life. Handicapping, gambling. You never know what the day is going to bring. You never know who you're going to be putting down money on. You never know what games you're going to be following. Case in point, yesterday. I assure you that if you would come to me and said, hey, Al, you're going to be betting on North Dakota State last night, I would have bet everything against you, because going into yesterday, the only two things I knew about North Dakota State, one, the team was located in North Dakota, and two, their nickname was the Bison. And that was it. But, I'm looking at the college basketball card yesterday, and there were a slew of games. And suddenly it dawned on me, it's like, wow, they were a lot better than UTEP. Even though UTEP was hosting the championship game of the Sun Bowl Invitational last night, the Miners weren't that good. That much I knew. Because their head coach, Tim Floyd, stepped down after a miserable start this season. And it wasn't because he was sick and tired of just watching his Miners play. It's because the Miners weren't that good. And North Dakota State, one of those teams that plays a tough non-conference schedule and plays those teams like Arizona earlier this year they played, Missouri State a couple of times, Stephen F. Austin, played some good teams and played them tough. They were prepped for this game. And I'm looking at this line and I'm going, it's even. Now it's North Dakota State 1. UTEP isn't playing anybody. And I'm looking at the RPI ratings. I'm looking at the KenPom.com ratings. North Dakota State's here. UTEP's down here. And I'm thinking, nobody else is looking at this line. And how many times have I said to you, you have to concentrate the most where the odds makers concentrate the least. And nobody in the world was paying attention to this game between North Dakota State and UTEP. I can tell you that. So I made North Dakota State a top-rated 15-dime best bet. And what did they do? They fell behind early in the game, but then they came roaring back because they dominated UTEP on the boards, 50-30. They went into the free throw line twice as much as the home team. Many times do you see that happen? And they walked away with a double-digit win, and I scored with a fifth straight college basketball winner and a fourth straight top-rated 15-dime best bet in college hoops. And that's what you got to love about gambling. Listen, I've been playing the stock market a lot here over the past 6 months, and it's just like discovering a little gem in the market when you do your research and you find this stock with a company you've never heard of. I'll give you an example. Middle of October, I found this global asset management firm in the financial realm, which I never heard of before. Never heard of them. But I love investing in dividend stocks like everybody else. But I don't like investing in dividend companies, dividend plays where you don't also get a nice yield. I mean, to invest in a company that pays dividends but loses money and at the same time is kind of like a wash. So I invested in this one particular company, and I think I bought them. I bought them when they were at like 35.93 was the buy price for them. Well, as of yesterday, they're at 39.7. So they've shown a nice, tremendous yield, and they pay 6.05% their dividend as well. And I just collected the first dividend a couple of weeks ago. So never heard of the company. It's just like gambling on North Dakota State yesterday. But the research paid off. Hey, listen, you don't always win those type of things, but when you do, it just makes what you're doing so much more rewarding. But listen, guys, it's a weak college card today. I've got one complimentary play, though, in college hoops, the Kentucky-UCLA game. I've got an NFL freebie coming up here in just a moment, and I'm on a very nice complimentary play run in the NFL. 15-6-1 roll. I'm going to take a look at the early game between the Ravens and, yes, the Colts, formerly of Baltimore, for that big showdown. And one of your college bowl games as well. Of course, the big plays today. Let's start with Matt Rivers, one of the original charter members of this site. When I started it over 15 and a half years ago, this company, he has got a 22nd ever blank check NFL release of his career. He is 7-2-1 with these plays so far this season. It is on the early game between the Ravens and the Colts, one of the games I'm going to be breaking down. And you've gotten all of those plays so far, 7-2-1 this season for over half price off. Same thing goes today using coupon code BLANK, BLANK. Also going today, Matthew Parker, who last year finished the college football season on a 6-1 roll with 100 dime max releases in college football. Today, today. His first one of the entire season. It's on the Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth, Texas, at TCU Stadium between Army and San Diego State. He's got that going, so it's his 100-dime max wager in college football, number 7 out of 8, going back to last season, and it matches his 100-dime NBA winners. First one of the season. You got it over half price off a couple of nights ago with the Chicago Bulls, a 5.5-point favorite, beating up Orlando by 18 points. You get it for over half price off by using his last name, Parker, Parker. Also going today, Shawn Michaels, who is the winningest football handicapper here at the site over the past 6 years. Shawn Michaels today, 100-dime max wager release, only his 5th in the NFL this season. It's on the night game between Minnesota Green Bay. 72, 46, and 6 roll with 100-dime max wagers in the NFL. Of course, last year he closed the season on a 5-1 roll in the playoffs, including the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Just hit his teaser, a 50-dimer last Sunday, remember, on the Eagles and the Saints. 56 and 31 roll with teasers. That was a 50-dime play. This one is twice as strong. And that is over half price off by using the coupon code Sean, his first name. This, of course, being Saturday, you know the drill. Each and every Saturday, I give you a money-saving discount coupon code that can give you potentially save you hundreds of dollars off your total purchase price. Today is no different. That coupon code is 24%, 24PERCENT. Sing it after me. Only stipulation, it's not a mix and match coupon. You got to put everything in your shopping cart at one time, which means you got to do that. And it's a one-time usage coupon. If you have any questions, you can always contact customer service. Let's get to your complimentary plays. Let's start in the NFL. Listen, if you are going to play the game between Baltimore and Indianapolis, the way I look at the game, and listen, my best bet happens to be the Green Bay-Minnesota contest on the night card. I got to play Baltimore. Had the Ravens struggled offensively all season long? Absolutely. But what have the Colts shown you? Listen, 2 Thursday nights ago, I had a top-rated 15-dime play on Denver at Indianapolis. And the Broncos fell behind in that game 10-0 early. Trevor Siemian got knocked out. Brock Osweiler came in. And Brock Osweiler played great. And the Broncos, whose ground game had been running in mud the entire season long, ran roughshod over that poor Colts defense. And they walked away with that 25-13 road win after being down 10-0 early. The Colts have been a absolute train wreck in the second half of games this season. And now they're on the road. They're 1-5 on the road this season. You got a Baltimore team that basically, they beat the Colts here and beat the Bengals next week at home. They're punching their ticket into the postseason. So if you're going to do it, you got to lay the 13.5 points and go with Baltimore. That's the way I look at it. The other thing is you got a Colts offensive line that has given up more quarterback sacks than any team in the league this year. And they lost their starting center to an injury earlier this week, and he's now on the injured reserve list. You've got a quarterback who has mobility, Jacoby Brissett, and yet he's been sacked 49 times this year as well. You got a Ravens pass rush, which really has done an outstanding job. 38 sacks on the season. And here's an interesting stat I came across when researching this game. 34 of those sacks have come in the 11 games against non-playoff contenders. That's an interesting thing. So against the bad teams, the Ravens have capitalized defensively. But when they played like the Vikings, the Steelers, and one other playoff contender this year, I can't think of who, the story noted, they haven't excelled defensively, but against the bad teams, which the Colts are one of them, that's where Terrell Suggs and the guys have put on the pressure, and the defense has definitely delivered. So again, I just think that if you're going to play the game, you got to play the Ravens. Ravens last week held the Cleveland Browns to 10 points and 266 total yards in a 27-10 road win. And again, you got to go with Baltimore, and that's the way you got to play it. Let's talk about college basketball quickly before I get to the college bowl play. I'm going to go with Kentucky and lay the 7 points today against UCLA. This game is being played at New Orleans at the Smoothie King Center. Doesn't that just make you thirsty? Don't you want a smoothie after I told you that? Listen, this Kentucky team is a young team, obviously, like every year with Coach Cal's team, right? But it's a young team that has been playing progressively better here of late. which is natural progression as well. They're coming off a 93-86 win over Virginia Tech, a game in which they were down 6 at halftime. 6'9" freshman Kevin Knox, their leading scorer, after a miserable performance against Monmouth 2 weeks ago at Madison Square Garden, in which he was 1 for 9 with 7 turnovers, led the way with 21 points. He's their leading scorer and second leading rebounder, averaging about 16 points and 6 rebounds a game. Kentucky's only loss came against Kansas by 4 points. UCLA, this is a team that just got walloped at home by Cincinnati. This is a team that lost by 11 points to Creighton on a neutral site. This is a team that lost by 9 points to Michigan in Ann Arbor in overtime. You look at RPI-wise, you got Kentucky sitting at 26. You got UCLA at 19. KenPom.com. Again, Kentucky ranks 17. UCLA down there at 56. I think that Kentucky just is a better, more athletic team. I think that Kentucky is a more dynamic offensive team. And I just think that at this neutral court site, I'm willing to lay the points with the Wildcats here. UCLA, ATS-wise, a miserable money-burning team in Vegas. They have failed to cover 25 of their last 35 games versus SEC foes. They have failed to cover 11 of their last 14, so I'm going to lay the points with Kentucky. Let's talk about your early bowl game here today, the Birmingham Bowl, where you've got South Florida playing in this bowl for the second straight year. First of all, let's talk about the weather conditions. Steady rain is expected in this game here in Birmingham this morning. The game kicks off at noon Eastern time, 11 o'clock in the morning Birmingham time. South Florida is going to be taking on Texas. You got to wonder if South Florida is going to be motivated for this game. Listen, last year South Florida was thrilled to be in this game. Okay, and they responded with an overtime 46-39 win over South Carolina. But does South Florida want to be here this game? Because South Florida thought it was going to be the team that was going to be playing instead of Central Florida in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta against Auburn. But because it couldn't pull off the upset and almost did pull off the upset and probably should have pulled off the upset against Central Florida a couple of weeks back in the AAC championship game, it was relegated to this game. And of all the bowl games, where did it get sent? To the Birmingham Bowl for the second straight year. Hey, guys, where are you going? Hey, I'm going to Birmingham. Nothing against Birmingham. I've been to Birmingham many times. But if I'm from South Florida and I'm being stuck to the bowl game, I'm stuck going to Birmingham for a second straight year? Nah, that ain't flying, okay? And the fact is, they had their hearts and minds and souls set on going to a major bowl game, and that was the Peach Bowl. And now, again, they're relegated to going to the Birmingham Bowl for the second straight year. On the other hand, you have a Texas Tech team that comes out of a much better conference, the Big 12, which needed to rally in the fourth quarter from 10 points down to beat Texas in Austin in its season finale just to become bowl eligible and probably save Cliff Kingsbury's job in the process. This is a dynamic team, just like just like South Florida, that can put points on the board. Do I think that South Florida has the advantage slightly at quarterback because they have Quentin Flowers? Absolutely. Because, let's face it, this guy is such a dual threat, as you saw in the Central Florida game with over 500 yards of total offense. If you look on paper, South Florida, excuse me, guys, I get choked up talking about this game. South Florida, if you look on paper, has a very good defense, a better defense statistically than Texas Tech. But South Florida didn't play anybody really this year. In fact, I think South Florida only beat one team that actually went bowling, and that was Temple. So the fact that they led the AAC in sacks and led the AAC in tackles for loss and had the number 37 scoring defense in the country and the number 28 total defense in the country and the number 22 rushing defense in the country really doesn't mean a hell of a lot to me because, again, they really played a weaker schedule than Texas Tech that constantly was playing all these high-powered offenses by virtue of being a member of the Big 12. They're not going to have much of fan support here. Only about 1,000, maybe 1,200 tickets of their allotted 10,000 were sold to their supporters. Again, The other thing that you have to factor in, listen, I just think Charlie Strong is a lousy head football coach, okay? Lousy coach. Ultimately, I'm still willing to lay the points with South Florida, though, here. I'm not a believer in Texas Tech. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury really ever delivers in the clutch. I think that the victory at Texas was more because the Longhorns simply weren't a good team, weren't coached that well by Tom Herman in his debut in Austin this season. A team that had defensive deficiencies all season long. So I'm willing to go ahead and lay the 3 points with South Florida because I think Quentin Flowers is the most dynamic person on the field today. And in his going away game as a senior, I think he delivers once more, just like that incredible performance he put forth against Central Florida. And I think he rises to the occasion and lifts the Bulls to the victory. It's a 3-point line, so I'm willing to go ahead, lay the 3 points, and of course I'm naturally buying down if that line's anywhere between 3 and 4.5 points. The late bowl game between Toledo and Appalachian State, I handicapped that game. Let's briefly talk about it. This is a rematch bowl game. These two met in another bowl game last year, and it was won by App State. A 7-point line. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, but these two teams are so similar. It would be tempting to take the underdog, and yet App State is not as good as it was a year ago. Toledo is a dynamic offensive team, a team that only lost 2 games this year, one to Miami, Florida. The other one, I don't know how it lost at home to Ohio 38-10. I'd be willing to lay the points with Toledo in revenge, but again, they're pretty similar teams, although App State played a much weaker schedule. And yet, then I go and I look early in the season when Wake Forest was playing well, and Wake Forest came into Boone, North Carolina, and App State gave them all they could handle in a 20-19 loss. And early in the season, App State played respectable, and I think it was a 30-13 loss at Georgia. So I think it's a very difficult game, although I could see that one be a high-scoring game, certainly. San Diego State and Army, no opinion really on that one. Lean a little towards San Diego State, but listen, Army and San Diego State doesn't exactly get me that excited. So, of the 3 complimentary plays, if I had to rank them, I would say the Baltimore Ravens would be number 1. I would say Kentucky would be number 2, and South Florida would be number 3. And that'll do it for this video report for Saturday, and we'll do it again on Sunday, Christmas Eve, for your NFL action.